the podcast with Dan Bardell and Gregg Evans.
Hello, welcome to 1874, the podcast. Gregg Evans and myself are here to dissect Aston Villa 3, Crystal Palace 1 in a little moment. But before we do that, let's hear from our sponsors, NordVPN.
If you guys are getting fed up with missing live football, then our new show sponsor, NordVPN, might be able to help you out. NordVPN is a secure and private service which works on pretty much any device, including your laptop, mobile, and smart TV. If you want to watch, let's say, some US content, it allows you to appear like you're in that country. And while you're connected, no one can find out what you're doing, including your internet service provider. The service also has threat protection baked in to protect you from intrusive website ads and malware, which is pretty dab handy. A part of NordVPN supporting 1874, the Aston Villa channel, they have given us an exclusive deal of up to 65% off and 4 months for free, which also includes Nord's 30-day money-back guarantee. All you have to do is go to www.1874.io/NordVPN and sign up. All the details will also be in the description. And as always, we are truly grateful to anyone that signs up. We know that money is tight. But if you think NordVPN will help you out, it will also help us to keep the channel running.
Thank you very much to our sponsors, NordVPN, for continuing to back the show. Gregg, welcome. Always look primed for golf. Just if you were to get a call to go and play golf now, you could just run off and do it. Always dressed for golf, Gregg.
You can only see the top half of me, though, so you don't know what I've got on underneath.
You don't want to say what I've got on underneath there, in fairness. How are you, okay?
Good, yeah. It was a good day. Been a good week. Great results yesterday. Lots of good football actually yesterday. I think, wasn't there? Quite enjoyed. It's very rare actually. I get to watch match of the day these days. Tend to sort of just look back on games sort of directly after the games if I'm not there, or then go through some on a Sunday. But I actually had some time watching match of the day last night, which was quite fun. And yeah, some good games to catch up on, and yeah, great result for Villa. I think, as I said in the podcast last week or 2 weeks ago, before the international break, I wasn't too concerned after the Liverpool game. I felt that Villa would make amends in this Palace game, and yeah, they left it late, but they got there in the end.
Yes, some sensational late shows in the Premier League yesterday. Before we do get into the game, Gregg, we've had a super chat comment from Sir Unai Emery. I don't think it is Sir Unai Emery, but we'll answer it because he's paid money to make the comment. So thank you very much, Sir Unai Emery. So we've both got to pick who is the best player in our team. I absolutely know who you're going to say, and I think I'll probably agree with you even more so after yesterday. But who is it, Gregg?
No, I mean, look, I always say Martinez, don't I? But I always go for Martinez. But I think just the way that Moussa Diaby's playing now, I think that he's the real star player for Villa now. I wanted to get onto him at some point in the pod, but now we've got the opportunity to talk about him. Now I think I'll just go into a tiny little bit of detail, but I just think that the biggest compliment I can pay him is that his decision making is brilliant. He always makes the right decisions in the moments that really matter. Tends to find players with the right passes. Okay, look, he was a yard offside, or half a yard, or whatever it is, a foot, I don't know, offside for somewhat tiny for his goals. And you could say, well, his decision making wasn't great there, but look, those are tiny fine margins. I just think when he's in important positions, he's able to find players and set up chances, and I think that's what is giving Villa such a threat now going forward. He's just able to stretch defences in a way that wingers, that I've watched at Villa haven't really been able to in the past. In some ways, he reminds me of Ashley Young, but I just think he's a little bit different. It's the sheer pace, and yeah, Ashley Young was really quick in his day, but I think Diaby's quicker. I just think the sheer pace makes him such a threat. And we've seen wingers of different kinds over the years. Albrighton, Draper. El Ghazi, Milner, you can go through all the different ones. I just think he's something really different and really special.
I'm not having you say that Mark Draper was a winger. I'm not sure where that name came from in your head, but I can't allow that.
I meant Albrighton, not Mark Draper. Speaking of Mark.
Oh, yeah. I can't allow you to have that one on our podcast, Gregg. You're right about Diaby. He's so dynamic and so direct, and he carries that pace, and you're completely right in saying that he's a winger. But I think the way Emery utilises him and the way he plays him quite centrally, and he can drift, it makes him even more dangerous. And I find it mad that Villa's first choice signing for that position in the summer, was it? You know, we spoke all summer about that they wanted Williams. Diaby's kind of not the finished article because he's still young, but he's a more complete player than Williams, and has completely transformed the way Villa can attack, like you say.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, it's hard to say whether Martinez would have been any better. Williams would have been any better. Bloody hell, I'm getting my names.
Getting golf it's because he's primed for golf, just in case.
We're not used to these Sunday mornings. I'm fresh as well. So
no, I've been drinking. I was drank all day and all night yesterday, and I've managed to get up and I can get names right, so there's no excuse for you.
So Mark Draper and Nico Martinez, yeah, that's working really, really well at the moment.
Two really good.
No, but look, on a serious note, Williams, we obviously don't know whether he would have been any better. You know, you got to trust Emery in the fact that he wanted him, wasn't able to get him. And sometimes, look, that's how it works in football. You know, teams do not get their first choice target, and then often they have to go down to like their third, fourth, fifth, sixth, even seventh target sometimes. And sometimes it just works out to, sometimes it just works out to be better. And look, however they came upon Diaby, and we've talked about that in detail before, you know, it was Emery said to his data team and the recruitment team, look, please, can you recommend a couple of players who are very similar to Williams, and then we can analyse them and go from there. Obviously, he worked with Diaby at PSG, so he knew all about him anyway, he knew about his potential, and it was a combined effort and something that Villa worked together on as a group to bring him over to the club. And yeah, they paid a little bit more than they were expected, but it looks like good value now, doesn't it? Because I think he's a real game changer for Villa.
Yeah, I'm going to give the Gregg Evans answer. I'm going to Emi Martinez.
Yeah. That's why Martinez was in my head.
Honestly, he made 2 saves yesterday that probably on the face of it didn't look like world-class saves, but where I was sat yesterday, the lob from Eze that he managed to just pour down and then catch, that was such a good save live. I haven't seen it back, but it was such a good save live, and at such a pivotal point, such a crucial time, he made a couple of saves to keep it at 1-0, and then we all know Villa go on and win the game. He is just world class. He's easily one of the best goalkeepers in the world, and a goalkeeper that Villa are very lucky to have, albeit that Villa are one of the main reasons he is one of the best goalkeepers in the world, because they've developed him so well over the last 3 to 4 years. Let's talk about the game then, Greg. Villa made it 10 home wins on the spin. I thought it was 9, but everyone else seems to be saying it.
9 Premier League games, 10 in all competitions. Yeah, so I mean, look, you know, the Premier League ones are the ones that matter, but
we'll add it on anyway.
You know, 10 sounds nice, doesn't it?
Yeah, we'll go with 10 in a row. And Villa were actually better in the first half. I thought in the first half Villa played some lovely football, just couldn't put the ball in the back of the net. And actually, I didn't think we were as good in the second half. It got a bit frantic at times. But in that first half, I sat there just thinking, we've got some really good players. And we're a really good footballing team. The way we move the ball around, the way we, you know, pass and progress and opened Palace up and manipulate situations to create chances. I just watched us and thought, we're a really good team we are.
Yeah, I agree. It was well orchestrated, wasn't it? You could tell that, you know, they'd worked. The team have been working on certain passages of play, and every player almost knows their role now. I stuck a tweet out last night about Pau Torres. Now I know he was at fault for the goal, or certainly, you know, part of the reason that Villa conceded. Again, it goes back to that physical aspect, doesn't it, that we've spoken about a lot. He's a little bit weak at times when he's up against strikers. And okay, Mateta's a big boy, you know, he's going to bully most centre halves when it comes to that. But you just feel like he's just lacking a little bit physically.
Do you think it was to do with physicality yesterday? That goal,
well, he was kind of just brushed off the ball, wasn't he? Just a bit too easy.
I thought he was brilliant all round yesterday, Pau Torres. I thought on the ball he was. I saw you tweet on the ball, which you'll come on to, I'm sure. I thought he was brilliant. I felt that goal wasn't so much to do with physicality. He almost needs to not be coming as far as he's come. He's put himself in a no-win situation because Mateta is stronger than him. I thought it was a bit rash to come up and get so tight.
A bit too hard.
So Mateta, a bit high.
I think. Well, look, let's take it back a step. I think it all builds into the frustration, perhaps, that Villa had in the first half of not getting ahead. Now, Villa are going to come up against different opponents who play different ways this season. And I think Palace are one of the maybe 3 or 4 teams that are going to come to Villa Park or go to away games and sit quite deep. and try and hit teams on the counter attack and just play that almost low block and try and not concede first and foremost. They're the complete opposite to, say, Burnley, aren't they? Whereas if you look at Palace's players, they could probably play the way that Burnley play better than Burnley do. Yet they've got a manager that clearly wants to set up that way. It's quite efficient. They pick up more points doing it that way, and they'd started the season quite well, so fair enough. But the first half didn't quite go to plan for Villa, missed a couple of opportunities, didn't take the lead. So when they came out in the second half, they were quite aggressive, I thought, from the kickoff. And you could see the high line sort of creeping higher and higher and higher, and they were almost forcing it. I think Torres had more touches than, well, he did have more touches than anybody. Excuse me, between the second half kickoff and the Palace goal. And he was just trying to force it a little bit too much. He'd played a couple of short passes, gone back to Emi Martinez a couple of times, played a few over the top, one diagonal over to Cash, I think it was. And it just felt like they were trying to force it a little bit too much. So they were really high when Palace then came at them and broke. And Palace were the complete opposite to what Villa did. It was bang, 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 3 or 4 passes, and all of a sudden they're, in on goal almost. So yeah, I'll take your point. I think Torres was a little bit too high, but then when he is too high, he's just a little bit too weak. And he'll look back on that goal and he'll know that he'll be disappointed in it. But fortunately, Villa were able to go and get the job done later on in the game. And Torres, for what it's worth, all of his passing was brilliant. He had the most passes into the final third of any single player this season. It was 25 passes into the final third from a centre back. And the next one behind him was Enzo Fernandez for Chelsea in one of the earlier games that they had played. So that's the level you're looking at. You're looking at almost a centre midfielder in the way that he plays the game. He's going to create a lot of chances for Villa. He's going to help build their attacking play throughout the course of this season. And look, if he can work, well, I'd not say work on his defending because he's still a good defender. It's just in those little moments it isn't quite going for him. But we've seen Ezri Konsa have issues like that when he first joined Villa, and look at him now. So he's not a young player, but he's new to the Premier League. So he's going to be learning. And if Villa can win 3 out of 5 games like they have done this season while he's learning on the job, I think they're going to be in a really good position.
You've got to accept really now at this point that he's a unique centre-half. There isn't really anyone else like him. If he was playing for Manchester City, the way he plays football would be getting absolutely raved about, but he wouldn't have to do as much defending as he's having to do at Villa. I will say in the second half, he made a great recovery kind of interception / block again at 1-0, I think it was at the time where he got back in and the Crystal Palace chance disappeared because he'd managed to cover off. I think Konsa had got beaten, and he managed to cover it off. But he's just such a unique centre back, and for you to say that, statistically about the passes into the final third, he's the head of a midfielder that Chelsea have spent £100 million on. That's incredible, isn't it?
Yeah, and that's the reason Emery was so determined to sign him. Emery wants Villa to play in a certain way. He wants them to be a possession-based team, to dominate the game, to be on the front foot, and they're getting there now, aren't they? I mean, Villa Park is a genuine fortress now. We can safely say that now. Villa are seeing off the lower ranked teams pretty easily. Okay, it was late in the day yesterday, but the extra time, the time wasting from Palace, that allowed Villa the extra time that they deserved to go and get the job done, and they did. They've got game changers they can turn to off the bench, which we'll get onto shortly, I'm sure. The starting 11 is very strong, and they've got a clear way of working. I think what Emery wants Villa to do, they're getting there. There are times where I'm looking at him on sidelines and he's still getting frustrated, but I don't think he's ever going to not be frustrated unless Villa are able to produce the kind of performance they did when they beat Newcastle 3-0 last year, for example. That's the only time really I've seen him quite calm, because literally everything went to plan. But football's just not like that. There are going to be moments in games where you have to grind it out, where you have to change your plan slightly, and sometimes just kick it long, or sometimes just kick it into touch. That's just how it works. Emery wants
not like it when Matty Cash kicked the ball into touch.
No, but every moment he wants to be perfect, but it just doesn't work like that. There have to be times where you ride it out, and that's what essentially Villa did yesterday.
No, Global Pilot's asking us. I met Global Pilot actually in the whole suite, and he was a lovely man. Asking about Zaniolo. Obviously, Zaniolo came into in the 11. Dave Reid and myself speculated about whether him or Tillemans would come into the team and there'd be something to freshen it up. It turns out that it was Zaniolo that played from the left. McGinn moved back to where I would say he's better on the right. He's again talk about Pau Torres being unique. Zaniolo's very unique as well, but
Yeah,
he's got a lot of stuff that I like. Presses very well, not afraid of getting his foot in, which is rare for like a number 10 flair player. And because of his frame and his size, like he's very good on the ball, but he can just like kind of back people off because he's
yeah.
so big. He's going to be a useful player for Villa, I think, when he gets up to speed properly.
Yeah, I think so. I think that's key, isn't it? He's not up to speed yet. It's pretty clear, isn't it? You know, he's sort of up and down in games, has some good moments, and then you kind of wonder, oh, what's happened there. I thought,
Likes a back heel.
yeah, he likes a fancy flick, doesn't he? You can see that. But I think having someone like that in the team, because Diaby's not really that quite a player, not really that type of player, is he? He's very efficient. That's why I go back to my earlier conversation about Diaby. I think that he doesn't mess about. He gets the ball in the right position, and then he's able to find a teammate or go and do something destructive. Zaniolo wants to do a little bit more, which I think is fine. Villa have the freedom to have that luxury type player, I think, at the moment. I like the way he's able to sort of back into defenders and
Yeah.
win fouls and be quite strong and hold the ball and hold up play to that effect. I think he's good at that. I do think he tries to overplay a little bit. He gave away possession a few too many times yesterday.
Emery will work on that,
But
though,
but he's going to have good moments, isn't he? He's going to be an exciting player, and I think he's going to be one that we'll enjoy watching.
Yeah, in that first half, Villa did a lot of things really, really well, except for the finishing. They just couldn't put the ball into the back of the net, albeit Diaby did put the ball in the net and he was marginally offside. But the way we were working was really, really nice. And you probably come in at half time and think there wasn't much wrong with what we did there. We've been tight defensively. Crystal Palace haven't had a shot. We marginalised Eze as best we can, who is an absolutely sensational footballer. Just glides with the ball. He's absolutely brilliant. But we didn't put the ball in the back of the net. Now we all know what went on to happen at the end of the game. But what do you put that down to in the first half? Sometimes I guess sometimes teams can just have a half or a game like that where it just feels like nothing is going to go in the back of the net, whatever you do.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's a bit of a boring answer, but sometimes that is just how it turns out, isn't it? And you have to just keep pushing and probing and doing the right things, and having a plan B sometimes to turn to when it isn't quite going. I thought Watkins looked a little bit frustrated to me. I thought, he had two good chances, didn't he, in the first half? One that came about through an error from Palace, another one that he forced himself. But I think, credit to him, he was still there in the moments that mattered really late on to win the penalty, which I know you might disagree with me on this, but I did think that was a little bit fortunate.
If it had been given the other way around, I'd probably be here complaining about it.
Yeah. I mean, look, I'm all for taking
Let's not jump ahead,
the positive
though, Greg.
on.
Let's not jump ahead, though, Greg.
Yeah, you were not yet.
We'll come
But
on to
look,
the penalty.
he was pushing and probing the whole time. But look, the real story of why Villa didn't get ahead was probably because Watkins wasn't finishing off the chances, wasn't it?
Matty Cash probably missed the
Matty
best
Cash had a
chance,
couple,
didn't he?
didn't he?
Completely
Yeah,
missed the ball.
yeah. And then he had a header, didn't he?
Yeah.
As well, which he probably should have.
Matty Cash could
buried
be
as well.
pushing double figures this season already because he had a chance in the Liverpool game, had a really good chance in the Newcastle game, scored 2 against Burnley, scored against Hibs. Quite comfortably, Cash could be on 5 goals so far this season.
Yeah, and I think that's what you're going to see, aren't you, from the fullbacks? Dino, another assist. They're going to get forward quite regular. Certainly against teams
that's a good
like
point. I noticed yesterday that both fullbacks were bombing on.
Yeah.
I know we don't say that very often, do we? Want the Cash or the right back normally tucks in. They both had the freedom to bomb on yesterday, didn't they? At the same time.
Yeah, it's really interesting because it's. I always go back to this example because Villa played Crystal Palace and Bournemouth back to back last season, I think, or certainly back to back home games. And the game plan for both of those teams was completely different. It was, if you remember, Crystal Palace, Matty Cash was getting forward like he was yesterday and got the assist because Crystal Palace sit a little bit deeper. Bournemouth, they're seen as more of a counter-attacking team that get forward quite regularly, and that meant that sort of the fullbacks had to sit back a little bit deeper on that occasion. So literally every game plan's different for Emery. They have a couple of hours going through video sessions in the week leading up to the games, and it will be specific. Are the fullbacks going to sit back this week, or are they going to get forward, or are they going to get forward when Villa are 1-0 up, or when Villa are 1-0 down, or when it's 0-0 after a certain amount of times. There's lots of different phases that they go through and that they turn to. So yesterday was clearly one of those days where the fullbacks were able to get forward, and it worked to good effect. Okay, Cash missed a couple of chances. Dina did get his assist at the end. But I thought they created some decent moments.
Cash seemed to just be, when I say about Villa were manipulating chances and manipulating space, always seemed to work the ball so that Cash was free on the right. Crystal Palace were fairly compact, in fairness. That they were fairly narrow, weren't they, in the way that they'd set up. Their game plan was clear, and they very nearly pulled off the perfect game plan from their point of view. AVFC Stato's just messaged in saying, sitting in a cafe, having a full English breakfast and a cappuccino, enjoying the show. That's a very football Italia from AVFC Stato there with his
I like that though. Fair play. That sounds nice. I've just had my breakfast here. Had a full English today, so that was nice. Yeah.
I mean, I'm going to be honest. I got
no good for a vegan like you, is it?
Vegetarian, mate. There's a difference. I'm slightly concerned that I ate meat in hospitality yesterday at Villa. I stopped eating it because I just was like, this must be meat. It has to be. So I stopped eating it because I wasn't sure.
Does it not make you sick if you haven't eaten meat for a very, very long time? Like presumably you have. Does that not make you sick when you have meat?
I've not eaten it for 5 years.
A vegetarian was telling me the same story.
Oh,
and
really?
Apparently you feel quite dirty almost after doing it, right?
I mean, in fairness, I'm probably the drink all day and all night. That's probably. I actually feel completely fine, which is very, very, very rare for me. I don't know what's happened. I think after Dublin last week, perhaps maybe I'm just used to alcohol now and don't need to worry about it. Alberto Solano is playing Football Manager and watching the show unbeaten in 14 games with Villa. You can't do both at the same time. Alberto Solano, you've got to be Football Manager the full concentration
I like
that he deserves.
Multitasking, I like that.
I can't do that. I can't, and I've had no breakfast because I got up 14 minutes before the show was due to go live, and I prioritised sorting Tebow out over myself. So I've had no full English breakfast. That does sound very, very good though. Right, let's go where I've completely forgotten where we were. So half time, it's only football to a T, isn't it? You've dominated the first half. You've not scored. Crystal Palace haven't had a shot. You kick off. Crystal Palace have their first shot. It goes in. You're 1-0 down, and just the face of the game just completely changes.
Yeah, admittedly, it did feel like a bit of a concern at that point, because you kind of thought, well, is this going to be one of those days where, and Crystal Palace are pretty good at sitting deep and holding teams off, is this going to be one of those days where it just doesn't go in the back of the net for Villa? And fair play to them, they didn't rush it too much. They didn't try and hoof long balls forward. They continued to play the way that Emery wanted them to.
Do you think that? I thought we were a bit. I don't think
they were too frantic. I thought they did try. There are times when players take it on themselves to try and force it, and I'll have to look back on the stats to see if there were a few more long balls than not. I think perhaps there were a couple more, but I don't think in general the approach changed too much. I felt like they were pretty calm. Okay, a few more balls were pumped into the box a little bit late on, but that's where Villa eventually got their goal from. And if you look at Dina's cross, it wasn't one of his typical on the spot sort of bang one touch finish, one touch finishing it to goal, setting it up for him. It was almost a bit of a hopeful ball into the box, and it was Duran that did all the damage from there. A truly wonderful goal, wasn't it? I mean, just brilliant to watch. Yeah, it was very similar to Benteke, wasn't it? Yeah, it had that feel to it. The way he controlled it and swiveled and shot. The power on the shot as well was similar to Benteke's, wasn't it?
It was a joke, the power. Absolute joke.
Were you roaring after that one? Were you up?
I was up, mate. I was up. The one I celebrated the hardest was actually the third, because we're skipping ahead, but we went 2-1 up, but I was still thinking, there's probably about 15 minutes left there.
Yeah,
because of the stoppage time situation and how long they looked at it. But to get the third, that was the one I celebrated the hardest. But Duran's goal was absolutely stupendous. The power. He didn't actually really go in the corner, I don't think. I've only seen it back a couple of times. was quite central still, but Sam Johnson just had absolutely no chance because of the sheer power of the shot. It was a very, very well taken goal. And it was interesting, the subs that Emery made yesterday. Not often you see John McGinn go off. Kamara went off, didn't look massively happy, but players are going to have to accept that now. We've got a squad. We were losing the game, and he tried to change it. And then who was the other sub? Completely. Bailey obviously came on as well and scored. So some players came off the pitch who perhaps you would think wouldn't usually. And we went to the two strikers up front. Diaby moved to the left. That's where I felt like it was a little bit frantic. Obviously, Diaby playing in the position he hasn't been playing. The two strikers, natural strikers, which isn't really something that we usually do. Louise was still going forward, and I wouldn't say Tielemans is a natural sitter in the two, but I didn't think Tielemans was brilliant when he came on, but what he did do towards the end of the game, he did try and force things, but in a positive way. He played a couple of balls that maybe I'm not sure that anyone in our squad would have seen or would be able to play, and it was him that put Watkins through to win the penalty. And that was just like you said about players taking responsibility. Tielemans took responsibility there and played that ball through. It was a real measured pass, and Villa have won a penalty out of it. Now, you just said you didn't think it was a penalty. I agree that if it had been given against Villa, I'd think it was very, very harsh, and I'd probably be sat here complaining about it. But the ref gave it instantly. VAR have obviously asked him to go and have a look at it. When he's been at that screen for so long, and boy, he was there a long time checking it. The longer that went on, you just thought, he's going to have to stick with his decision here. Because if he's looked at it for this long, there's no chance he can say it's a clear and obvious error. So I credit the referee. I'm obviously going to say it because it's a Villa penalty, but I do credit him for being strong. And actually, he did kind of follow the VAR rules. I imagine Howard Webb will be doing a video on him in a few weeks' time, absolutely raving about what he did. And that, in fairness, that is how it's supposed to be implemented. But I agree, if I was a Crystal Palace fan, I'd probably feel a little bit aggrieved that he got given in the first place.
Yeah, I think I have to agree with everything you say. I don't think it's a penalty. No, okay. Do I think it's a penalty or don't I? I still can't decide whether I think it's a penalty or not, which is why I have sympathy with the officials in that respect. Because if the referee's made a decision and then he's looking at it and he's thinking, not quite sure whether it is, but I think it is, but there's a chance that it isn't. But I've already made the decision.
If he hadn't given it, it wouldn't have got
exactly.
given, would it?
That's the way I think. It's just it's very, very rare, I think, from watching football all across the Premier League that a referee goes to the monitor and doesn't change.
Yeah,
I'd love to know the stats on it, but it's so often than not.
One more time.
So often than not, they go there and they change their mind. Because that's almost the reason they've gone there, because it's so close to needing to be changed.
He got a lot of the ball, didn't he? But he came through Watkins to get the ball. So I can see why the ref has given it. But if that's Ezri Konsa sliding in on Mateta or Edouard, we're sitting here now and we're saying Villa have been done there, haven't they? Yeah, probably. It's one of those. It comes down to the initial decision the referee's made. Like I said, if he doesn't give that VAR, I don't even think they'll say, do you want to go and have a look at the screen? I don't think he even gets called over the screen. I think VAR decide themselves that it's not a penalty. But because he's given it, VAR obviously think this is a little bit dubious here. I'm not sure this is a penalty. But he's seen something that makes him think it's a penalty, the referee. And like I say, when he spent about, was it 5 minutes?
It was 6 minutes in full.
6 at the screen. With them making the decision as well. So, that's a long time.
It's a long time.
You can't say it's clear and obvious, can you?
No, it's not clear and obvious. But regardless of what happened, we can argue, we can discuss and debate it for all morning if we want to. But the penalty was,
of course, to get to.
The penalty was given, and look, what Villa did from there was impressive. And I think Douglas Luiz now as the penalty kick taker, you trust him, don't you? There was Watkins obviously missed a couple, and the decision was made to put Luiz onto penalty kicks. And the process behind that is a long one. It's Villa work on set pieces in training almost every day. They have specific sessions where they work on pattern various movements and God, what's the word?
Patterns? What did you say? Patterns and
Yeah,
what?
like not patterns. Various,
Triggers?
various movements in from corners and free kicks. What's the word? I can't think of the bloody word.
I
Uh,
don't know. I don't know. Oh, you baffled me. I'm not sure. After what you were
anyway,
explaining was
they,
okay.
they they work they work on how they're going to take the corner.
Routines.
Routine. That's the
Here we
bloody word.
go.
So basic. I've had a
Come
mare
on.
today, haven't I?
It's fine.
That's 3 times.
Unfortunately, it's live though.
So yeah, they work on specific routines. That's the word I'm looking for in the week. Friday, Thursdays and Fridays after the normal training session, they'll have a little bit of extra time going through those routines and working on perfecting them and making sure that various players are in the right positions, that the set piece takers are know exactly where they have to put the ball. And penalties are something that they've been working on as well. And Villa use data to back everything up. So they know which free kick takers are most efficient from 20 yards, from 25 yards, from 30 yards, and penalties are the same. And they've got technology to show that which are the best players, how the best players are performing from penalties. And across Bodymoor Heath, there are little charts that will say Douglas Luiz has scored the most penalties in training, Ollie Watkins is second, etc. So there's no arguing over who takes the penalties, who takes the free kicks, because they've got the data and the technology to back that up. Now, Douglas Luiz wasn't even a set piece taker, was he? When he first came to Villa in his first season, I don't think he took any corners or free kick. Maybe a free kick, but I don't think he was taking the corners. But when Austin McPhee came into the club, he worked on his technique and realised that he could be a real threat for Villa. And as you'll see now with Douglas Luiz, he has a very specific penalty kick technique, which he's been working on over time. The same with corners and free kicks. And some of the other players, actually, Emi Buendia was making really good progress with his set piece taking before he got injured and would have been a real threat for Villa this season had he been fit and available and playing. I think it's just going back to what we've talked about in previous podcasts. There's a great coaching team at Villa now. We know that Emery, what he does with the team and what he's done with this squad is brilliant. But just behind the scenes with some of the data guys and the set piece coach and the analysts that work at the club, they're of a really high level now, and that's why we're seeing Villa progressing up the table, because the departments at Villa are well stocked with good people.
Luiz is one hell of a player now. He's got so much to his game, and the set pieces and the penalties just add probably another 15, 20 million to the price that Villa would want if anyone came in for him. He's arguably Villa's most important. I think Villa's top three players at the moment. I don't think Luiz and McGinn were brilliant yesterday. Top three at the moment are Martinez, Luiz, and I've left the RB out, so that's not true. What I'm about to say, completely ignore me. I'm talking absolute rubbish.
Villa, it's then, good though, isn't it? If you can name him 3 or 4 real standout good players, that's your spine of your team almost.
Yeah, Leon Bailey.
Really good start.
Yeah, Bailey finished the game off. And you know what? He's been quite productive this season in terms of putting the ball in the back of the net. He's got a fair few goals. Leon Bailey. Villa managed to seal the game and catch Crystal Palace on the break, which meant that it wasn't a nervy end to the game at all, which was absolutely brilliant. So Emery's changed it up with 3 subs there. Where I was sat, we were kind of saying at the time, I don't think the subs coming on have made us any better, because I think we played well in the first half with the 11 we had on the field. I didn't think we played as well in the second half, but every sub that he brought on made an impact. Duran obviously scored a goal. Tillemans played the pass that won the penalty, and then Leon Bailey finishes it off. Even just bringing Dendoncker on at the end just to see the game out, there was no better player to finish a game when you're just trying to see something out than Dendoncker, because he keeps it so simple and positions himself so well. So all his subs change the game, and I've not seen a manager that's capable of doing those kind of things at Villa before. The way Unai Emery operates, there's so many different spheres to it, but to bring those players on them all, I mean, it's in a way, is it luck or is it judgment? We don't know, but he's made those changes, and they've all had an impact. And Steven Gerrard was crying out for a moment of magic when he was the manager. Emery makes a sub, and Duran comes up with an absolute moment of magic, and then the other players all contribute as well. It's just the measure of the manager, really.
Yeah, and look, the measure of Villa's squad as well now. I think, you got to focus more on the manager, because he has improved players. He's made players that weren't performing very well at Villa look great now. McGinn was struggling, wasn't he? Luiz wasn't even playing. Duran's come in, and Emery's been very clear with when speaking about him, that he needs time, that he needs to be training regularly with the team, getting used to various movements that he has to make in a game, sticking to his defensive duties when required, and just making the right runs as well, because we've heard about all the work that Emery's done with Watkins and how he helped last season, helped him increase his goal talent. But with Duran, it's the same. He came in as a very a kid, really,
Raw.
a kid with just raw, with no experience whatsoever. He wasn't even somebody that Emery was aware of when he came to the club. He didn't even know who John Duran was. This was a club signing, someone that Johan Langer and the data team put a lot of time into, and realised that he had a lot of potential and was going to be potentially a very good player. I think we're kind of starting to see that now. You can see a bit more confidence in him. He scored the goals that have given him the boost. And that finish yesterday, fucking hell. I mean, that was just that was amazing.
Calm down, mate. It's for 10:43. You're dropping F-bombs.
It was good, though, wasn't it? If ever there was an F-bomb moment, that was it.
I agree. It's very unnecessary from you, though.
Excuse me for all the young listeners.
I hope for apologies if anyone who's a child is watching the show. Absolutely outrageous from Gregg Evans.
I think if there are any children watching this, don't follow Dan Bardell's style guide, because that's a bit more of a concern.
To be fair, if there's a child watching this, the chances are they've been to Villa Park and probably heard the F word as well. Potentially, they'll have heard the F word at Villa Park. I know it's a family club, but there is the odd swear word at Villa Park every now and again, isn't there? So that dissects the Crystal Palace game. Now we've got Gregg Evans' segment, which I've completely forgotten what it's called. So it's going to be called a different thing every week.
Press Box Archive.
Gregg Evans' Press Box Archive. Let's go, Greg.
Yeah, I'm hoping that nobody's heard this story before, because I have told a fair few people about it previously. So not majorly exclusive to the 1874 podcast right now, which is what it should be. But anyway, I thought with Sam Johnson playing yesterday, it'd be worth retelling this tale now. This is perhaps more of a tale of what to do and what not to do in journalism, and how to be careful sometimes when slating or overpraising players too much. But if you remember, when Sam Johnson joined Aston Villa, Villa were in a bit of a difficult moment in the Championship, and under Steve Bruce, they were struggling. Johnson had made a couple of errors early into his career, if you remember, Dan. Yeah, and I decided to, because I was working for the Birmingham Mail at the time, I decided to highlight all the individual mistakes that Sam Johnson had made, write about them in great detail, and basically put Villa's disappointing form down to Sam Johnson's mistakes. Now, probably what I hadn't considered was that the reason he was in the Championship at Villa on loan from Manchester United at the time, was it Manchester United? Wasn't it?
Yeah, it was.
From Manchester United at the time, was because he'd been out injured for quite some time. He needed to go and learn his trade in the Championship. So there were obviously going to be, a few difficult moments for him early into his career. And I think what we did see with Johnson later on was that he turned into a decent goalkeeper for Villa, didn't he? And
he's a good keeper now.
And still is a good goalkeeper. Yeah, you don't get in the England squad, and you don't play regularly in the Premier League if you're not. But yeah, so I remember writing the article, I think it was on a Wednesday, and then we had a press conference on a Thursday at Bodymoor Heath with Steve Bruce. And at the time, it was Gary Walsh who was the goalkeeper at Villa, and
goalkeeping coach.
Goalkeeping coach, sorry, at Villa. And yeah, I walked into the toilets at Bodymoor Heath just before the press conference, and then in came Gary Walsh, and I thought, I wonder if he's kind of followed me in here, or if it's just a pure coincidence. But anyway, we kind of said hello and introduced myself, and without swearing again, he said, "Oh, you're the guy who wrote about Sam this week," and I was like, I had to quickly refresh my brain about what I'd written, because at that point we were asked to do about 30 stories a day, and I realised, it was obviously the one that I'd written, slating him, and he just kind of laid into me for about 3 or 4 minutes, without me able to say anything back of why I'd written it or anything. But then said, "Look, you've got to give this guy time. He needs time. Come back to me in 2 months, and we'll have a conversation about how good he's been." And I thought, right, okay, well, we'll see. And in a couple of months, he actually had been very good. And I went back to talk to him, and he wasn't interested in talking. So don't burn your bridges too early in journalism. That's all I should say.
I had a similar thing with him, actually, because I was doing the Villa View, and I was new to doing this kind of thing at that point, and I was laying into him quite heavily as well. I quite liked Galini, the keeper before him, and I didn't at the time. I was just like, well, this isn't an upgrade because this keeper's making mistakes as well. Everyone was slating Galini, and then we've signed this keeper that's supposed to be better, and he's doing the same thing. And I gave him a bit of stick as well. And later on, I heard from someone at Villa that he'd said basically, "Oh, that guy used to absolutely hammer me, but now he's really nice about me, so he's all right."
Really?
The second season, he was brilliant. I think I voted for him player of the season the second
Yeah.
season. So it does show that you do need to give players time. So maybe those that are getting on Pau Torres a bit, by the end of the season, we might be saying you had to go. It's a bit like Villa when Emery first came in had to go through teething problems with the new system to get through it and have that season that ended up finishing seventh. With Pau Torres, we might have to go through these moments now, but in 3 months' time, we might be saying, absolutely brilliant. He's acclimatised. He's learned. Football isn't. Everyone wants everything instantly, but not everything works instantly. And sometimes things can happen that might cause you pain in the short term, but over the long term, are going to be a benefit for the way the team plays and benefit to the players and things like that. And I think that might be where we're at with Pau Torres. But I think that's a good story. I've had countless times where I've got in trouble for.
Oh, look, I mean, I'm I've been in trouble
another great story
all the time.
There's a great story that you've told me that you haven't, obviously, about someone shouting at you down the phone. That's one of my favourite footballing stories ever, that story. I absolutely love it.
But I mean, look, that is journalism. You can't go through a journalism career writing positive stuff about people all the time. It has to be. You can't dress it up nicely. And at the time, I do stick by it in some ways because Johnson was really poor at that point. And,
way of doing it, though, isn't it?
And the errors needed to be discussed. But yeah, there is a way of doing it. And maybe it was a bit of naivety on my behalf. I was relatively young at that point. And you learn, you learn things, and yeah, it's like Torres now. He's open to a little bit of criticism, but there are times that there are things that he's doing in his game that are really good. And I look back to Kamara at the start last season. Okay, he settled in quite quickly after, but his game against Bournemouth, his debut, was pretty shocking. He made the most fouls out of any player. He gave away one of the fouls that led to one of the goals. I just thought he was pretty sloppy in possession, and then you thought, Villa got the right player here, but clearly, they have. And sometimes players just need a bit of time. I'm convinced that Torres will. I don't know whether he'll be a great defender for Villa, but I think he's going to be a big asset in terms of his playing style.
I just trust the manager. If the manager wants him and thinks that he's going to progress Villa, then that's fine by me. Who am I to argue with Unai Emery? The guy clearly knows exactly what he's doing. So yeah, I think that almost does us. Just a few people in the chat have said about the 85th minute fans leaving. My best mate, so he goes every week. He was going on holiday, flying from Heathrow yesterday. So he said to me before the game, he's like, I have to leave on 85 minutes. I never do this, but I've got to leave on 85 minutes. I was saying to him, just give your ticket to someone else. I was with all the stoppage time and stuff, you might have to leave on like 70 minutes.
Yeah, because it's now a 105-minute game, isn't it?
Yeah, so I said to him, just don't go. He's like, no, I'm going. I'm still going to go to the game. I text him after the game saying, what was the score when you left, mate? He just texted me about saying, just felt like those kind of games just don't happen, do they? Like, they're so rare. I can't remember
3 of them yesterday, but
I can't remember a Villa game in the Premier League ending in that kind of manner, where it's just such a late show and you end up winning the game. The only game I can think of that come close to that is the Sheffield United one, where they were 3-0 down, and they drew 3-3. I was more annoyed by that more than anything, actually, that game that they decided to only play well in the last 10 minutes. I don't remember too many games where Villa have rescued a situation like that.
I mean, look, it wasn't a home game, but Sheffield Wednesday away was
in the
Championship.
Sorry, I said Premier League. I'm sorry,
excuse me.
Right, Premier League. Okay. That's fine. Yeah. I can't recall Villa having a team that's capable of doing that kind of thing. It was just unreal. It was brilliant to watch and brilliant to be a part of.
Yeah, I feel sorry for you, pal. I hope he got to Heathrow on time after all that.
I think he did. I think he did. But just the way he texted me, just saying, I bet he couldn't believe it when he looked what the score was. He said he knew it was going to happen. He said as soon as he walked out, he knew he'd missed something. He knew they'd score. I bet he didn't think they'd win though. But
I think I think just generally across the Premier League now, the 4:40 p.m. 4:50 p.m. finish now on a 3 o'clock kickoff. You're looking at sort of 5:05 now, aren't you? It's a 100 to 105 minute game now, and I think it's good for the game because we are seeing more goals. Yesterday, you've seen Liverpool turn it around really late. Tottenham turned it around really late. Villa turned it around really late. Yes, hopefully it will stop these teams. Okay, I know Sheffield United were really frustrated with the way the refereeing decisions that went against them yesterday. But I think the teams that sit back and just try and time waste, and look, to be fair, Villa were one of those last season, weren't they? At times, Martinez was, a chief contributor towards that. But hopefully, it will cut out some of that. That's what it's there for, and hopefully, it just gives fans a few more goals to celebrate.
If Sam Johnston wasn't hurt and it was a time wasting tactic, that's come back and cost them, because the only injury that you can really get away with now is a goalkeeper, and he was down for a long time. But if that wasn't genuine, I'm sure it was.
And the penalty wasn't it as well, though?
Yeah. But before the penalty being given, there was already 9 minutes of stoppage time, wasn't there? And then I don't know how much I actually don't know what minute we went to yesterday. It must have been crazy.
115, was it?
Was it 115 minutes?
I don't know. I watched so many games yesterday. Newcastle was right up there as well, hitting at over 100 minutes. Liverpool was the game that I was at.
Yeah. Well, let's go. Thank you to the people that are wishing me happy birthday in the chat, by the way. I don't know how you know it's my birthday, but it's very much appreciated. Lovely little community we have in the live chat here. Thanks to Gregg for joining me and Lee for producing as well. Weird to do it kind of first thing on a Sunday morning, but I thoroughly enjoyed it, Gregg. You're free now to go, Gregg, and carry on with your day and do whatever it is that Gregg Evans does on a Sunday. Thanks to everyone that's tuned in, and thanks to those that are going to go on and listen or watch as well. Before Gregg tries to claim that I'm 40, I'm 38, but I am approaching 40 rapidly. It's coming around a lot quicker than I would like. We'll be back with a match preview in the week leading up to the European game, so watch out for that. Stay tuned to our socials and we'll let you know when that's coming. Alberto Solana says, enjoy your golf, Gregg. He just knows. He just knows that that's going to be
top man, Mr. Solana.
There you go. Are you going? You are going.
If the rain holds off, I'll be there 100%.
Okay, enjoy. You have a good game, Gregg. You have a nice day on the golf course. We're going to go now and carry on with our Sundays. Thanks ever so much for watching. Up the Villa.